So here's my story. I've done about 350 television interviews of change agents, leaders, CEOs, heads of companies, heads of corporations, sometimes ambassadors and diplomats. 350. They're all on YouTube. You can watch them, Expat Insights. Of those 350, I had Jack Canfield, I had Brian Tracy, I had Scott Friedman, I had Peter Senge. If you don't know who that is, you got to look up that person. That was my best interview, and of course the most famous one was Jack Canfield. Now, when I started this TV show, I wrote it, I produced it, I didn't shoot it, but I did most of the work. My core mission in that TV show was to highlight strengths in diversity. That means if you were different, as Anu and Karishma claim that everyone is different, if you were different, I wanted to highlight your strengths so that people gel and respect each other. That was my promise for the show. You know, when you ask people, what is the reason behind the show? My reason is to equalize diversity, make people love each other. That was my intention. So I told my staff, who was doing the invitation, I said, invite everyone and anyone, no matter from what country they come from, as long as you feel that they are different from you, different from this culture, different from me and you, go invite them. Ambassadors, diplomats, etc. So all these people who went through, heads of Cambodia, heads of Vietnam, somebody from Thailand, people who didn't speak English, they were on my show for 30-40 minutes. I was asking them questions. I was evoking their stories to share it with the community that was watching the show. So one day, my assistant invites the Pakistan ambassador. Long pause, real long pause. And she said, hey, Raju, I've invited the Pakistan ambassador. And I said, great! And then a week later or 2 weeks later, when we were doing the flyers, etc., and I was about to visit Pakistan, it struck me. I said, gosh, Pakistan, I'm Indian. How in heaven's name am I going to interview the ambassador of Pakistan and highlight his beauty, his values, his strengths? How am I going to paint a picture that is positive about the ambassador of Pakistan? Remember, they broke our country into two. They cut it apart. Partition. They raped my great-grandma, maybe. Right? Maybe they murdered somebody in my family. How in heaven's name am I gonna look for good in this human being? It struck me. I said, gee. But here, I kept the promise. That I will interview every Tom, Dick, and Harry. And here's this thought on my mind. I said, if I do this interview, if I bring out the beauty in the ambassador of the Pakistan, every single bleeding Indian is going to hate me for the rest of their lives. They'll never watch my show. They'll never talk to me. That's right. What do I do? How do I back out of this situation? Now realize this, that I made a promise to myself and I'm thinking of backing out. Right? So I began to pray for a typhoon, for an earthquake, for a hurricane, for the Pakistan ambassador to fall sick, for the TV station to explode or to shut down. But every single one of those prayers did not work because they were not authentic. They were not creating value. Right? You can't create a typhoon or a hole in the cloud. So what do I do? And the D-Day was getting closer and closer. And I asked my staff, has he fallen sick? Has he called out? Has he checked out? Or what are we going to do? And every time I was thinking of an excuse, I was thinking, that's a lie. Right? If you make an excuse, that would be a lie. What do I do? So I said, I have to call up someone, people who are smarter than me. So I have a mentor, she's a dean. And she teaches me English and all this stuff I know. Her name is Dean Rose. So she's in her 70s and I called her up. A night before the show, before the taping. 1.5 nights before. I said, Dean Rose, I have a problem. Dean Rose, at that time, she said, Raju, I'm watching SquarePants and SpongeBob. I'm busy right now. And she's my mentor and teacher. I said, Dean Rose, can you take time off? And here's my situation. So I shared the situation. India, Pakistan, rape, war, etc. 26/11, blah, blah, blah. And what do I do? How do I do? She said, Raju, there's a bookstore. Tomorrow morning, go buy a book, War and Peace. You read War and Peace, then do the interview. The Anatomy of Peace. I said, Dean Rose, I don't have time to read a book before I do the interview. Give me an idea. And she said, you know, my show's going to end. call me some other time. And again, then I call up another friend of mine. He's a Burmese, blue-blooded son of a diplomat. So he lives in the Philippines. He's in his 70s, a very bright man. Yoda, wisdom man. So I called him up. His name is Ashok, but he's not Indian. You know, Burmese people have Indian names. I called him up, Ashok, I have a problem. He said, Raju, me too. I'm watching Square Bob and SpongeBob. I'm busy. Most people in their 70s do the same thing. I watch Square Bob and SpongeBob. So Ashok, I have a problem. He said, Raju, say no. I said, how do I say no? I'm already confirmed. We send letters and emails, we send the questions, and he said the bio data, everything is ready. He's excited to come on the show. The Pakistan ambassador. I forget his name, Rizwan Khan or something. Ashok says, Raju, tell him no the Asian way. And I go, what the hell is the Asian way? you know the difference. The American culture, the Western culture is a direct culture. They say no. The Asian way, they say maybe, some other time. I'll try. Yeah? Or I'm sick, or my grandmother's getting married again. Some weak, cheap excuse you give him so that you can postpone the thing. And I go, Ashok, that would still be lying. I can't do that. As soon as I said that, it struck me. He said, I can't lie. It will be against everything that I stand for. It will be against my principles, it will be against the promise I made to my audience, to my guests, that we highlight the good in you no matter how, quote unquote, shitty you are. Are you with me? So that struck me and suddenly, I felt relief, like I know you felt relief. So, come day of TV. The Pakistan ambassador is there with his assistant and his staff, and I'm there, and we sit across like how this young, handsome man is sitting exactly like him, and I sat down next to him. Rizwan Khan from Pakistan, ambassador of Pakistan. My job is to interview him. And remember, this was about 5 or 6 years ago when Osama had been
assassinated.
Yeah, assassinated. And this was like a year or two after 26/11 in Bombay. All that shit, and also the grandma rape thing. Not my grandma, some grandpa, some Sindhi grandma, sorry. So he was sitting right in front of me. I began to ask the questions. Tell me about your relationships with Pakistan and Philippines, because it was in Philippines. What are we doing? What is the growth? What is the capacity? What's coming up? All positive questions. And in my mind, there are questions about Osama, terrorism, 26/11. I asked him those questions.
Very good.
I asked him those questions. Now, here's the deal on asking big questions, is that if your intention is to highlight the good in someone, the way you frame your question will give him space to answer the question correctly. And he did. He did. And he mentioned, I don't remember the whole interview, it's visible. He mentioned that the trouble that Osama's group, what was that terrorist group?
Al-Qaeda.
He said, we have challenges to Raju, and I'm glad you asked me that question. So he explained his position. At the end of it, I felt a sense of relief. And here was this man who looked almost like me. Yeah? But I had biases against him. Remember, I was fighting my unconscious biases. And that's what Mr. Arunagari said. He said, you got to fight your unconscious biases against the rest of the world before you become a leader, or before you change the world. Yeah? Because if I assume that this man has no capacity, he's terrible inside out, I'm not going to change him. So anyway, the interview went great, went very well. At the end of it, I said, Ambassador, can you give me a quote from your country that will kind of impact me and make me remember this interview and you for the rest of your life? And so he said it in his language, and these are the words he said. Make yourself so mighty in spirit and selflessness. Make yourself so mighty in spirit and selflessness that when before your destiny changes, the Lord Almighty will ask you, what do you want, son? You have the book. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Okay, I'm going to give 2.
Bukan pulang, Netra.